Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the California playlist developed by our own Sydney Little, communications manager and DJ extraordinaire. We'll post that on our website so you can have the Spotify list if you're interested. But welcome back. I hope you're all refreshed and ready for the second half, because this is really where the rubber is going to hit the road. And I'm very excited to introduce you to Danielle Lynch of Environmental Energy and Consulting. Ms. Lynch specializes in natural resources, conservation, and equity, social justice funding and policy, including developing strategies for clients to achieve their funding and policy goals. She worked with stakeholders in 2016 to write language into Prop 64, which was the law that legalized adult use of marijuana, to make sure that there was funding for restoring environments that had been damaged by cannabis cultivation. And she was an early leader on Prop 68 in June 2018, working with legislators to draft and support and pass that proposition, which was the first parks bond in, I think, 15 years. So thank you, Danielle, for being with us today. She is going to talk to us about our legislative agenda and how to be an effective advocate. So take it away, Danielle.
Hey, thank you so much, Rachel. It's such an honor to be here. And especially an honor to follow up Director Quintero and Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia. They're so inspiring and are just, showing so much leadership. So it's really great to be part of the conversation with them. So as Rachel mentioned, I will be talking about what's going on in Sacramento. So what are people currently advocating for? How does the process look like? And how can you guys especially get involved? So let me just pull up a quick presentation. Perfect. Can you guys all, I guess, can you see this, Rachel?
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome. Perfect. So I want to start off, I suppose, with the budget. And I'm really excited that Rachel and her team have asked me to talk about the budget, because I think a lot of times we focus a lot on bills, and I think that, could be a response to the fact that legislation is a lot easier to track throughout the process and a lot easier to engage in. The budget process is a little bit more transparent, a little less transparent, but it's incredibly important. I wouldn't say necessarily more important than policy bills, but at minimum equally important, because that's how we really, get things done, and that's how we get the support that we need to implement important projects and do really critical things. So to start off, here's kind of a general process for what the budget looks like. So January 10th, the governor released his proposed fiscal year 2021 through 2022 budget. On April 13th, he did sign what we call an early action budget package due to, COVID emergencies along with wildfires, which is a new thing that we didn't expect, but we're very grateful to see. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later. By May 14th, the governor will release his May budget revision. So we saw the January proposal. He'll now take a look based on new tax projections and make revisions to that proposal so that we and the legislature can respond and get ready for the June 15th deadline by which he needs to approve a final budget for fiscal year 2021 through 2022. So just a quick kind of general overview of the timeline and what to expect related to the budget. To kind of break that down a little bit more, the January budget proposal that the governor released a few months ago did have a lot of really great investments for parks. So I think thanks to the work that Rachel and her team have done over the past several years, along with all of you, the governor continues to really prioritize state parks and access to the outdoors. I think especially after seeing, the COVID-19 pandemic and really witnessing how much people need to access the outdoors, especially in times like the pandemic. I think it's really highlighted and promoted the fact that, we need the outdoors. Not only do we need to make sure that there are outdoor spaces to access, but we need to make sure that people are able to access those spaces, that they feel safe when they go out there, and that they have programs to help them really utilize that space and get those benefits. So included in the January budget proposal is a focus on expanding state parks and park access. So $82 million was included in his proposal for the Advancing Parks for All initiative. So that included funding for deferred maintenance. It included funding to increase access at various state parks, and it included funding for the Youth Community Access Grant Program. So funds for people to implement projects that actually get people into the outdoors and provide them with activities once they do get there. I also included money for climate change. So $85 million to protect forests by increasing forest management on state parks. We've witnessed a really devastating year. A lot of our state parks were really impacted by the wildfires that kind of blew through the state this past year. So there is quite a significant need to try to restore those state parks to ensure that people can start accessing them once again, but also to prevent and reduce the risk of wildfires from happening as we continue and as we move into the next fire season. So this is what was included in the January budget proposal. As I mentioned, the governor did do something that was quite unique and really important this past year. So on April 13th, he actually signed an early action budget proposal that included $535 million for wildfire and forest resiliency. He did this because he did see that, there's a great need to ensure that we're able to implement projects to reduce the risk of wildfires, and we're able to restore our land that has been devastated by these wildfires. So on April 13th, he passed an extra budget bill that was signed in a way that did make that money available immediately. So that included $15 million for state parks. So state parks now has $15 million in quote unquote extra and immediate funding that they can start using to do projects that are related to wildfires. So a really exciting thing that we saw Governor Newsom do this past year to ensure that we didn't have to wait for the normal budget cycle to be able to get money out to state parks and to wildfire purposes. So moving forward to the May revise, so we saw the governor's January budget proposal. As I mentioned, now that we're able to better forecast and we've seen tax revenue start to come in, the governor looks at his proposal from January and makes changes based on what we're seeing as the actual tax projections. Those negotiations are happening right now, where the governor is identifying, what changes does he need to make, and stakeholders and legislators are starting to do similar things. What we have seen is that state tax revenue is actually a lot greater than what was originally forecasted in January. I think most recent publications have said somewhere around $14.3 billion. The tax revenue is greater than what was originally forecasted. We also know that federal funds are coming down to California, and that means up to $26 billion that will go into the general fund that can be used for state purposes. So we actually believe there's a really great opportunity this year to increase the amount of funds that the state of California can get out to a number of different purposes. And hopefully that May revise that the governor puts out soon. I actually just got a text that it could be released as early as May 12th. Hopefully that will include a much larger budget, including, funding for state parks. So those negotiations are happening right now. We'll hopefully see what the governor is proposing in mid-May, and we'll be able to then respond to that. And, the legislature will be able to respond to that to try to work for what ultimately will need to be a budget that the governor needs to be signed by June 15th. So we are working with legislators, stakeholders, to ensure that maximum funds go towards the right purposes, and certainly state parks is going to be one of those big priorities. So moving into legislation, we heard Assemblymember Garcia talk about the bonds this year. This is something that is a really big priority for the foundation. We know that there's not a lot of funding typically that is available to use for natural resources purposes, which is why bonds are really so critical to ensure that we're able to fund the right types of priorities throughout the years to come. So AB 1500, the bond that Mr. Garcia talked about earlier, is his bond that includes $6.955 billion for a number of different climate purposes. What's really great about this bill is it does include $400 million to state parks for the statewide parks program to ensure that those communities that don't have a lot of parks are able to start to develop or expand what is existing in their community. It also includes $70 million for state parks for wildfire purposes, and then $50 million to state parks for sea level rise. So a lot of really great investments in Assemblymember Garcia's bond, and the foundation is really excited to be supporting that bill. The other bond on the Senate, SB 45, which is authored by Senator Portantino, is a bond that includes $5.595 billion. And again, another really important natural resources bond that does include $50 million to state parks for the purposes of preventing the impacts of climate change or responding to them. So 2 bonds, one in each house, which really does indicate that the legislature wants to see a bond placed on the 2022 ballot, and is indicating that state parks are really a big priority. So I think really, really good news, and something we're certainly going to be pushing really hard to ensure we do see on the ballot in 2022. So moving into additional legislation, AB 585 is a bill by Assemblymember Luce Rivas. And what this bill would do is establish a new grant program called the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program under the Office of Planning and Research, which would facilitate the implementation of projects that address extreme heat. So we know that a lot of our communities throughout the state are really facing a lot of devastating consequences of climate change, extreme heat being one of them. So this would allow organizations throughout the state to apply for new dollars to do things like implement cool roofs throughout their community, plant trees, and build and staff community resilience centers to make sure we're keeping everyone safe. So a bill that the foundation is really excited to be supporting this year. SB 604 is a bill that Senator Wesso is authoring that would establish new grant programs under the State Conservancy's NWCB that would fund climate projects that are implemented by workforce development organizations. So again, these would be projects that do really critical things that, preserve outdoor spaces, that create trails to be able to access parks, to plant trees. But the really great thing about this bill is that it would reinforce and promote the need to take advantage of those opportunities to actually train and build a workforce that is much needed to be able to continue to do this important work. And it would really promote opportunities for those who have barriers to employment being involved in those training programs. And then last on this slide is AB 67. This bill is related to sea level rise and the need for the state to really coordinate and recognize the impacts of sea level rise. The bill would prohibit the use of state funds to be spent on building new infrastructure or expanding existing infrastructure in areas that are vulnerable to sea level rise, and would actually require the state to come up with a plan as to how to address the impacts of sea level rise. I think a lot of different entities are focusing on this a little bit, but we really need a large scale effort that is coordinated throughout the state to ensure that everyone has the information and the tools they need to make sure that the state is appropriately planning for the consequences of our sea level rising. And then moving into expanding access to parks. So we have a number of bills that have been introduced this year that the foundation is supporting that would really ensure that parks are accessible, inclusive, and reflective of our state. Once again, I think COVID-19 has really highlighted the need for the outdoors. So we're really excited to see a lot of leadership in the legislature pushing bills that do acknowledge that our outdoors are so important and do set up tools to be able to ensure that folks are able to actually get out to the outdoors and get all the great benefits of them. So first is SB 624. What this bill would do is it would declare the state's commitment to equitable access to the outdoors. It would identify what existing barriers exist preventing that access, and it would give the resources agency authority to take action to address those barriers. So a really strong statement that would be essentially codified and put into law that does say, you know, the state is committed to making sure people can access the outdoors and promote the ability for the state to actually ensure that access. Similarly, AB 30, which I know Assemblymember Garcia mentioned earlier, is a bill by Assemblymember Calra that would declare that it's the policy of the state, with a particular eye to the Resources Agency and Department of Transportation, that access to nature is a human right. So really making sure that it is very clear that every human, every Californian is and should be able to access the outdoors, and that is a human right that everyone should have. So another really strong statement that would be put into law that folks would be able to point to as they're promoting different resources to be able to actually ensure that that happens. SB 266, a bill by Senator Newman, would require that state parks acquire land consisting of 3 properties that would facilitate the expansion of Chino Hill State Park. So this is a bill, again, that the foundation is supporting because it would ensure that there's more ability for folks to be able to access Chino Hill State Park and be able to enjoy all the benefits that come from access to that park. And then lastly, AB 542 would ensure that all 4th graders have access to parks. It would require that state parks waive the entrance fee for 4th graders to be able to access those parks, ensuring that children are able to access state parks and just one more barrier is removed to be able to do so. So really excited to be supporting Assemblymember Mathis and AB 542. And I think that brings me to the last bill that we are supporting. So Rachel, I don't know if we want to open it up for questions here, or I'm happy to move into advocacy.
Sure. I think there were some questions in the chat about legislation. I saw one asking from Jorge at Friends of Santa Cruz. Hi, Jorge. For a question for clarification on the 14 billion of forecasted revenue. This is tax revenue and is not included in the 45 billion. Was it 45 billion from the federal government? I thought it was 26 billion from the federal government. That is one-time funding, but wondering about the impacts on the budget revision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yep. Perfect. So yes, so the 14.3 is the most recent report that I've seen. And that you're absolutely right, Jorge. That is additional money that is projected to come in from our taxes this year, in addition to what is already included in the January budget proposal. So in my mind, I like to think of it as extra money that we can actually play with, and that the governor can hopefully start identifying where he wants to put that money for his May revision. So to your point, that would be one-time money. It wouldn't be recurring, and it would go into the general fund to be able to use for whatever purposes the state wants. So kind of an extra $14.3 billion that the state can actually allocate through the state budget. That does not include the $26 billion that is coming from the federal government that would go into the general fund. So you're looking at two separate pots of money, 14.3 from state taxes, 26 from the federal government, all being additional dollars that the state could actually get out this year.
Okay. So also I saw a question that actually was just posed to panelists, and so not everybody saw it, but can you just talk a little bit about the process for how the two bonds would eventually come together and be one?
Yeah, so obviously there's two bonds. So I think the assembly has 1,500, and that's really their statement about what the assembly wants to see funded through a bond that would be placed on the 2022 ballot. SB 45 on the Senate side, that's their statement about what they want to see. Obviously, or each bill is currently in their House of Origin. So SB 45 is in the Senate, AB 1500 is in the Assembly. Eventually, they're going to have to cross houses, which gives the other house the opportunity to weigh in and reinforce what they want in a bond. What we've typically seen is that somewhere along the process, typically in the second house, the two houses are forced to kind of talk to each other and merge their bills into one. That can happen a lot of different ways. They can decide we want to all work with one bill and choose one and amend it accordingly, or they could amend both their bills to have the same language. But at some point, there's going to need to be a decision made where one bill actually goes to the governor for signature. So that'll require both houses to start talking about how can we negotiate out what we ultimately want to see on the ballot to make sure both houses are happy. So we'll probably see both bonds continue to move into the second house, but at some point in the next few months, there will likely be conversations happening between the two houses and the two authors to try to negotiate out whose bond is going to go to the governor and what's the language that we want to make sure is seen in whatever bond that is that moves to the governor for signature.
And just because I actually don't know the answer to this, does that mean because it's a bond, they don't have to go, because Friday's the deadline for bills to move out of policy committees and into appropriations, but that does not apply to the bond bills. Is that correct?
Yeah, so because the bonds are 2/3 vote bills, they actually are able to have different rules applied to them in terms of timeline. So they can actually go faster or slower than the normal process and guidelines would usually require.
Okay, got it. Well, we should move on to the next segment. There are a few more questions in the chat, but we can, again, we're going to capture all of it and we can communicate some of those answers later. So Danielle is going to move on and tell us all how to be very effective advocates. Thank you.
Yeah, so, and I realize we have quite a bit to get through, so I'm going to try to be fast here, but please stop me because I know I can tend to be a little bit wordy. But moving into advocacy. So obviously, I've talked about what the State Parks Foundation is currently prioritizing this year, what we're currently doing in the Capitol to try to advance those priorities. But I know you all like to get involved and you want to get involved, and that's something that's really important and does really help us to get things done. So I want to start off talking about why is advocacy important? it is your right. It is something that you are able to do and no one can take that away from you. So it is incredibly important that you really use this opportunity and that you're promoting the things that you care about. Advocacy also helps to improve government services. So when you don't like the way that something is being done, you're actually able to identify that and speak to your legislators about it. There's only one way to really make that change. And a lot of times those who are in the state capitol, who are state agencies, they don't see how things are working on the ground. You are the ones who see that. So you're able to actually lift those things up and help make a difference. Advocacy also holds elected officials accountable. So a lot of times, legislators are voted into office to represent their district and to represent their constituents. But when they come to the Capitol, a lot is coming at them. They're dealing with a lot of issues, a lot of priorities, a lot of people. So it's very difficult at times for them to pinpoint things that are important to their constituents. So it's really your job to continue to hold them accountable, to make sure that they're remembering why they're in office and that they're remembering what is important to those in their district. So it's really important that you're able to really promote those things and remind them why they're here and why they're in the Capitol. Advocacy also mobilizes communities and generates movements. I mean, we've seen a lot of this happening over the past couple of years. You making your voice heard, talking to your neighbors, talking to other organizations. It has to start somewhere. And a lot of times, with enough passion, with enough energy and effort, you can really build a strong movement and make things happen. And your priorities are important. There are a lot of priorities, but the state is able to get a lot of things done. And it's your job to make sure that you're identifying what is important to you. And if it's important to you, it's probably important to someone else. It's probably important to a lot of people. So you want to elevate those issues and make sure that everyone is seeing what it is that you believe is important and hopefully kind of building around that. And lastly, it's a proven way to get things done. I mean, we've seen it happen. We've seen the great work the foundation has done with all of you guys helping to make sure that state parks continues to be lifted up, that resources continue to go to state parks for a number of different purposes. It is a real way to make sure that we are getting the things done that we want to get done. So utilize that, make sure that you are doing and taking advantage of the tools that you have in front of you to actually make sure that what's important to you is happening. So how can you be an effective advocate? So these are just kind of some general things that I would suggest that you all start doing if you want to make your voice heard and you want to be an effective advocate. So first is know who your senator and assembly member are. I think Rachel is going to give you some tools to be able to identify who your senator and assembly member are if you don't already know them. But these are the people who you may or may not have voted for, but you certainly have an opportunity to vote for again if they're up for re-election. So they really care about what you think. And they are the people who, no matter what, are supposed to represent you. So know who your senator and assembly member are and make sure that you are communicating with them. Similarly, know your senator and assembly members' key staff. A lot of times your legislators are busy. So it really is the key staff that you're able to talk to on a regular basis. And a lot of times who have the ability to make decisions or talk to their legislator to persuade them on things that they care about and their constituents care about. So get to know them, make sure you know their names, make sure you're talking to them regularly. Be comfortable calling your representatives directly when needed. So a lot of times I think those who are on the ground especially are afraid of this and they don't think that they have the right to contact their legislature. They don't know how, they're uncomfortable doing so. Get comfortable. Legislators are just like you, especially staff, are just like they want to hear from you. And really, they have to listen to what you're saying. They have to talk to you. So make sure that you are starting to experiment with this, starting to talk to them, and then hopefully making this something that you're very comfortable doing. And especially now, during this quarantine that we're all currently in, be comfortable with virtual technologies. This is something that, I think one good thing is it's allowing people to meet more frequently. It's allowing more connection because we don't all have to be in person. But it does present a barrier for those who aren't used to using virtual technologies. So make sure that if you aren't typically using Zoom, if you're not used to conference lines, that you're starting to familiarize yourself with those tools and get comfortable with them, because that is kind of the way of business now. And so we want to make sure that everyone is able to communicate as much as possible. Be able to describe why your priorities are important to their district. So this is really important. A lot of times we're talking about things that are statewide priorities or are just generally good policy. That's great and that's important, but legislators, what really speaks to them is when you describe to them why something you're pushing for is important to them, their constituents, and their district. They know that they are beholden to their constituents and their district. So the more you can really emphasize why your priorities matter to their district, the more likely they're going to listen to you. Become a resource to your representatives. So again, legislators have a lot coming to them every second of every day, a lot of priorities they're faced with and they're having to make decisions on. So what's a really important thing is to make sure that you're a resource to them to help them answer questions. They can't be an expert on every issue. So you can be that expert to them so they can call you anytime they have a question or they need more information on an issue. So you want to provide value to them by being that expert who can help explain these different issues to them. Next is follow through, and this is so important because I think one thing that unfortunately happens because of the busy world that we all live in is there's a lack of follow through. When you meet with someone, make sure you're taking clear notes on any next steps, and make sure that you do actually do what you say you're going to do. It's unfortunate how often I hear from those in the Capitol that a lot of times meetings happen and nothing comes out of them. So be that person who they know they can rely on and that they know when they ask you to do something that you will follow through. That's incredibly important and only adds to your value to that office. And then know your elevator's pitch. A lot of offices, especially legislators, do not have much time. They have so much on their plate. So know your elevator pitch. Be able to quickly go through what your priorities are. If you're Rachel and you see Director Quintero at a park, make sure you have your quick elevator pitch about what's important to you so you can quickly get to, on their mind and have a very fast conversation about what your priorities are. And then last is be an expert, but also be likable. This is really important, and I've heard from offices how a lot of times they hear from people who are one or the other. Someone who is an expert but knows they are and therefore has an ego, or someone who's likable but doesn't necessarily get things done. So in an ideal world, you can be both. Someone they can reach out to because they want to, because they like you, and because they know you have answers. Being someone who is able to blend those two seamlessly is incredibly valuable to someone in the Capitol. And then easy ways to get to know your legislators. So I know, and I'm sure a lot of you, maybe have never done advocacy before. So I wanted to just put together a quick list of things that you can do to start engaging in advocacy, to start cultivating a relationship with those in the Capitol. So first is schedule a meet and greet meeting. Again, a lot easier with our virtual technology now. Meet and greets are a really nice way to just get to know your legislator or get to know their staff in a way that doesn't require you to ask something from them. This is really important because no one wants to be the person who the first time you're talking to your legislator is asking them for something. The best way to really cultivate a good relationship with an office is to first just get to know that legislator and their staff. Talk to them about your priorities, talk to them about what you do, why that's important to them. Have a casual conversation with them to learn about their priorities and what's important to them as well. That way, if and when you need to go back to them with a request, they already know you. Ad hoc communication. So if you have something on your mind that you want to talk to them about, if you found a cool new report on something that you have talked to the member about before, if you know a bill is going to go in front of them that they could vote on that you'd like their support on, send them an email, give them a phone call, shoot them a text if you have their cell phone number. These are great ways to just stay in touch with that member, so you're continuing to cultivate that relationship. Social media is a really, really big one. Twitter especially, legislators love social media, and it's an easy and quick way to communicate with them. Like their tweets, comment on their tweets, put up your own social media that's expressing your gratitude for something that they're doing. This is a really great way to quickly start having that dialogue with legislators in a way that they really do pay attention to. Letters is another good thing. I would especially encourage all of you, if and when you do meet with your legislator, a handwritten letter is really nice, saying thank you for meeting with you. It was so great to talk about X, Y, and Z. Looking forward to more conversations. It's a really nice touch, and a lot of times I see those letters in legislators' offices. Legislators' website. So if you're very new to this, look at their website, get to know what their priorities are, what they're currently working on, who their staff are, and you can even send in emails through websites as well. And then lastly is town halls. A lot of these are occurring right now virtually, but it is a really great way for you to have some time with a legislature, with a legislative member, and start to talk about what it is you care about in a more informal place where it's not just a one-on-one meeting, but an opportunity for you to just, start hearing about what they care about and engage with them if you wish to do so. Now, how to engage in strategic advocacy. So if you know that there are things that you care about and that you want to really promote with your legislator, this is how you can start really advancing those priorities in a meaningful way. So first and foremost, establish that relationship with your senator or assembly member. Learn the legislative and budget process. Look online. There's a lot of great tutorials, resources to start learning about how that process looks like and how to get involved. Call bill authors to learn about their bills and ask questions. Another great way to start cultivating relationships with them. State and reinforce your position on bills. So if an author has introduced a bill that you love and you think is really important, submit a position letter saying that you're in support of that bill. Provide comments during committee hearings. When that bill is up for a vote, make sure you call in and you say, hi, I'm this, I work with this organization and I'm in support of this bill. I hope you can vote for it today. And then help build legislative support for bills. So in addition to just making sure that you're supporting the author and that you're supporting the bill when it's up for a vote, you can actually help them build more support for the bill. Contact your legislator to talk to them about a bill and ask them for their support of the bill when it's up before them. And then publish social media and other press in support of that bill. So press releases, tweets that say, hey, AB 266 is going to be up in this committee. I hope you can vote for this bill, Assembly Member XYZ. Another great way to really just remind that author that you care about their bill and encourage more legislators to support that bill as well. And I think Rachel is going to talk very specifically about ways that you can engage in this type of advocacy with the bills that the foundation is really promoting this year. So I will hand it off to her.
Wow, right on time. Perfect, Danielle. That was great. And I want everybody, we got a lot of questions in the chat. People found the resources really helpful. So actually all of these resources, I'm about to go through what's on our website. Thank you so much, Danielle, for your time. And I think everybody can see why you are such an effective advocate for the environment. And we're just really thrilled to be working with you and learning from you. So great to have you. And thank you so much for taking us through all of that. That was a lot. All right. I am going to now put you all to work being strong and compelling advocates for our state parks, because that's what it takes. People power, stories, and persuasive and persistent communication. It's required, a little bit of homework is required. So what I'm going to do now is take you through all of these resources that we've created. They're all on our website, and we'll put links in the chat as well. So first things first, make sure you know your legislator. You need to know who you're going to be talking to. So you can go online, look up who your legislator is. The link is in the chat. It's on the screen. Again, it'll be in the toolkits that are posted on our website. And, you know, as you heard from Danielle, legislators mainly want to hear from their constituents. But if you have a particular relationship or special knowledge on an issue that is important to their constituents and their district, of course, they want to hear from you. You also need to know what you're talking about. So number 2 is educate yourself on the process and the issues. There's a lot of tools and resources, again, that we've compiled. We've got infographics on the budget, on the legislative process, how state parks are funded. We've created some sample letters that you can adapt to communicate with your legislator. There's a social media toolkit to kind of learn how to work with that. So it's really important to spend some time and go through those resources and educate yourself. Okay, so now we are ready for number 3, which is take action. We've set up a bunch of action alerts that you can review and sign. And those are on priorities that really need action now. You can go to the website again, see where those alerts are, those action alerts are, and see where you can email and call or promote your particular position on social media for 2021 legislation. So then the next step is number 4. Share with us. It is so important. I cannot stress enough how important it is to let us and other advocates know about how you are communicating with your legislators. It really helps expand the reach of your efforts and everyone else's efforts. So throughout the month of May, we're going to be sharing stories from some of our park advocates across California, and you can join them. So share how you're advocating throughout the month of May and encourage your followers on social media to join you. You can, when you engage, you can tag at Cal Parks on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram throughout the month of May. And I'm really excited. There's a number of videos and interviews that we've done with advocates about why it's important. So keep a lookout for those. We do have a couple of minutes before our next speaker. So is there any questions about some of these resources and how to use them that I can answer? You can just put it in the chat. to let me know if there are questions. Again, the social media toolkit link is below. Can you have fundraisers in our name? You can always have fundraisers in our name. We don't have a formal sort of peer-to-peer fundraising question opportunity, but you can always set up like a Facebook fundraiser, or even just post a link to our donate page and ask folks to donate to support the advocacy work that we do. I saw a question about shareable graphics. So all of that is again available in the toolkits. Sydney Little, our communications manager, has worked really hard to develop a hub page. So again, if you go to calparks.org/Park Advocacy Day, you will find all of the resources that we've made available today, including the Advocacy 101 slides that Danielle presented. I saw a question about that. Let's see, other questions about our advocacy toolkits, just looking through. Oh, if you have a question about a particular bill, you can always email us at advocacy@calparks.org. I do monitor that email box. I don't monitor it hourly. I monitor it, once a day. But of course, please do submit questions there if you have questions about a particular bill. And we do have a legislation page that has a little summary of the legislation, and also links out to more information, the full text, and often the committee staff will do a deep dive into the explaining different sides of the bill and the context of it. So that's always a helpful resource too, that you can look at. So I think we are probably at time. We have our next speaker ready. And so before we introduce her, everybody take a deep breath, stretch. That was a lot of information. And again, don't worry if you didn't get it all. It is all going to be posted on the website. So I am so excited to bring in our closer. And when you meet this young woman, she is already a focused and determined advocate for state parks. We met her when she began volunteering at Half Moon Bay State Beach, and quickly became a youth corps leader, which is our volunteer leaders that lead volunteer groups. She is a freshman in high school, interested in biology, computer science, and engineering. And in her spare time, she likes traveling to national parks, hiking, reading, and listening to music. Everyone, please, it is my honor to welcome Tanisha Gupta, who's going to talk to us about why it's so important to advocate for parks. Welcome, Tanisha. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Rachel, for the lovely introduction. So as she told you, I'm a freshman in high school, and I'm a member of the Volunteer Corps Leader team at Half Moon Bay State Beach and CSPS Youth Coalition. So as a family, I and my family love going on road trips. During our trips, we usually visit state and national parks. I've grown to admire the natural beauty preserved by them, and the knowledge and experience that I've gained will stay with me forever. I got started as a volunteer when I realized I wanted to give back to the amazing parks that I had grown to love. My first volunteer experience was at Mount Diablo State Park, pulling out invasive thistles. The hands-on work, amazing leaders, and the ability to really see the impact I was making is what motivated me to continue participating. Since then, I have attended workdays at Henry Cowell State Park, Angel Island, and Half Moon Bay State Beach. Volunteering at state parks and seeing the impact of my contributions when I return is one of the most rewarding experiences that I have had. I also believe that youth are extremely important to the future of our communities. Youth involvement can benefit the community in so many ways. We can have interesting, innovative, and futuristic ideas that can really connect with the changing times and technologies of the future. ways that adults sometimes can't. We can be effective in planning and organizing change. This can be exemplified by the youth protests that have been organized through the use of social media platforms. We use the tools that we know how to use best in order to change things that we care about. We can help everyone understand issues that concern younger populations, and this increases the impact of legislation, rules, and organizations. Not only do community organizations benefit when they collaborate with youth, this collaboration also helps us. Community participation helps us become empathetic citizens who could potentially continue similar work when we become adults. When we give back to our communities, we develop leadership skills, learn the importance of helping, and gain work experience. These skills are extremely important for the future and to learn how to be active citizens in a democracy. I apply the skills that I've learned from my work with CSPF and in these amazing state parks to the things that I do every day. Taking care of parks is important to me for so many reasons. Parks are an integral part of my life. I've always found that my best ideas come to me when I'm hiking and surrounded by nature. For example, I needed an idea for a science fair project last year, and the one I finally came up with after a workday was using an artificial intelligence system to try and identify invasive plants in a field. This idea would not have occurred to me had I not gotten involved in parks and volunteering. Parks and nature give me the space to calm down and get away from the busyness of normal life, and I know that my peers have the same feelings. As a member of the Youth Coalition, I work with a few extremely driven and like-minded youth volunteer leaders. I know that some of my friends who don't visit parks as often also enjoy the ability to do so. So helping other youth advocate for parks is fairly simple. From what I have seen, we're extremely resourceful and driven to advocate on multiple issues. The same would be the case for issues of protecting state parks. The best thing to do in order to help increase youth advocacy would be to educate them on the topic, help them understand the benefits of their advocacy, and give them avenues to spread the word. For example, the Youth Coalition has been amazing for me to interact with other peers really invested in state parks and their future. And we hope to increase membership toward our collective goal of increasing youth involvement and protecting state parks. Given this, so much of the legislature that we're here today to support has a direct impact on a lot of the things that I have experienced. For example, AB 452 would waive the day use entrance fee for fourth graders with the Every Kid in a Park Pass by the National Parks Foundation. Fourth grade is a great age to be introduced to state and national parks, and the pass is a great motivator for a young child to visit. I cherished my pass the entire fourth grade year because it gave me the feeling that I had a special invitation to visit national parks that year. As we used the pass to enter the park, kind and encouraging words from the park staff for me as a fourth grader and pass holder contributed towards my feeling welcomed and wanting to visit parks more often. The same would be the case if this pass is extended to state parks. This bill, along with several other bills that were introduced, would help increase access to parks. This is extremely important to the Youth Coalition and to me as a member, as we strive to increase youth visitation and involvement in parks. So thank you so much. Thank you all so much for your time. And I hope you consider these points when thinking about youth involvement, ensuring the future of our parks, supporting our parks, advocating for our parks, and planning your own family vacations. Thank you.
Oh, Tanisha, thank you so much. I really so appreciate your remarks. And, you know, when you talked about how you were the recipient of a park pass and what that meant to you, it really just shows people the impact of these things that we advocate for, that they have real and positive impact on people. So we look forward to having you back at Park Advocacy Day when you are in the legislature, because I have no doubt that one day you will be a leader on these issues, as you already are. So thank you again so much for being here. It's really, it's always great to see you, and we just really appreciate your engagement with the foundation. So have a great rest of your day. And I'm gonna now close us out for the day. It's been a lot of information, a lot of great conversation. I'm so grateful to Director Quintero and Assemblymember Garcia and Danielle and Tanisha for all of the perspectives that they gave us today. You know, it was so striking to me to hear Director Quintero talk about just how important these places are, and how so many people he is encountering are experiencing these places for the first time. It's really exciting to hear that. And we have such an opportunity now to put our best foot forward and to really continue to make the case about how important these places are. I was also struck with Assemblymember Garcia talking about how, you know, people in his district grow up right down the road from Joshua Tree and never get there. And because that is one of my favorite places on earth, that really stuck with me as such an important anecdote for why the work we do on access and making sure that people know that these places are there for them and their birthright is so important. You know, what we just heard from Tanisha about her experience actually as the recipient of one of the policies that we're talking about this year in AB 542, the Every Kid in a Park, giving kids access through the Every Kid in a Park program. So all of these stories, you know, there's real change that can result from them. And what we really sought out to do today was to give all of you not just the inspiration for why this work is important, but also the information and the tools and the resources that you need to be great advocates. So I hope you will, you'll get a survey in your email, and I hope you will take that survey and give us your honest feedback about whether these resources are useful, what resources we could provide that we didn't, what information you want. It's really important to us as we continue to work on these programs and make sure that our advocacy is effective for for both our parks and our advocates. I want to just a couple more thank yous before we close. I want to thank the hard work of the staff at California State Parks Foundation, Ashley Tittle, Sydney Little, the whole engagement team really worked so hard to put this on, and I'm very grateful to them. Thank you to the board members who are here, Ben Cipollini, Carol Hart, Mukund Sarungapatnam, Leslie Leonard, Dave Mandelkern, Bob Walter, Manny Grace, Roz Neiman, Bert Johnson, and then our former board members, Patricia Perez and Gail Kautz. So great to see you all here. And finally, thank you all for coming. We really could not have the impact for parks that we have without all of you. And we are just so grateful to you for your engagement and your support of state parks and your support of the California State Parks Foundation. So I hope everybody had a great day. Fill out the survey, and thank you again for using your voice for parks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.